And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlowe, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Kathy Amos. As usual, we will start this show with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Kathy, it's been a slow news cycle here really for IU women's basketball, but I saw this on Twitter yesterday or maybe on Monday, but as of the other night, Grace Berger is now the all-time WNBA assist leader for former Indiana players. So I guess that she has 64 assists so far already in her first year in her career. And that makes her the leading Indiana alum assist WNBA person. So congrats to Grace Berger. And she's our proud banner moment here on tonight's episode. Our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that just loves great collegiate gear. I will say this. I love Home Field Apparel. I don't buy as much as some people, Coach Tonsoni, but they've been releasing some really neat, like Division II, Division I AA type stuff. They like App State, and a couple things that, from like the 70s and stuff. There was some neat stuff that they were releasing in the last couple of weeks. So, if you really like, those old style logos and retro style logos, Home Field is obviously a place to go. Not only do you get quality apparel, but you're supporting Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelley School of Business. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME, HOME, home get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. Once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And in news, we thought with this episode, we'd do some updating about IU alums playing overseas this season. And as their season are going to get started, I was looking at some of the stuff online. A lot of the European leagues are going to get started here the last part of September. A few of them are actually playing some exhibition games already. But a lot of our players have moved. Last year, we tried to do first year we really did. We really wanted to kind of keep our fans and our workaholics in the flow of what some of our former our alums were doing. But Alexa Golbe will be playing with Zaragoza in the Spanish League this season. She played in the Spanish League last year, but she's moved over to Zaragoza this year, where Zaragoza finished fourth in the league last season while losing the semifinals of the playoffs. But, it's one of those, I think, obviously Alexa hoping for obviously a little more playing time than she was getting. She played with a very good team in Avenida last year, and I think maybe looking for a little more playing time. So a move for Alexa in the Spanish League.
Yep. Also, speaking of Grace Berger in your Hoosier Proud banner moment, Grace is also joining Lointec Guernica in Spain after the WNBA season is over. Guernica finished fifth in the league last season and lost in the quarterfinals of their playoffs. So congratulations to Grace on that as well. I think this is, something we see quite a bit from even players that play in the WNBA, just because of right now, the money is still not there in the WNBA. Plus, this gives them a way to go overseas and continue playing all year round. So congratulations to Grace on that upcoming adventure for her.
I just realized the typo I have here. Tyra Buss is expected to be playing in Spain this season. Not Tyra Banks, as I have in my notes, but Tyra Buss is expected to be playing in Spain this season, but we're not seeing an official announcement yet of who she'll be joining. But I did see an Instagram post from her husband, Brad Davison, about where he is playing in Spain. And so I would imagine we'll see something here in the next few days about Tyra.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for her to be there then. Good congratulations to her and her husband as well then. So additionally, going down the line here, we have Amanda Cahill is going to be staying in Luxembourg. She will be playing now with Gringwald. Gringwald finished second in the regular season last year, and they actually won their league playoffs. And I believe that's a different team for her, right?
Yeah, her team changed. Yeah. I think I put this in the community. The team she had been with for the last couple of years ran into some financial issues. Their primary sponsor, a lot of these European club teams like this, even though they're professional, they're also kind of viewed as club. They have a primary sponsor, and they lost their primary sponsor for one reason or another. And the team basically asked to be relegated because there's a second division and this is what you get in a lot of the European leagues. Very much like if you watch Premier League soccer or English soccer, there's you get promoted and elevated based on where you are demoted, where you finished it in the previous season. But they asked to be relegated, so I would imagine there were some kind of opt out, or they just basically looked at a man and be like, hey, you're going to be too good for the league you're playing. We're going to let you go, and you need to go sign with somebody. But she's signing with Greenwald over there. And Amanda's had a very successful career in Luxembourg. We've been really trying to figure out a way to reach out to her, trying to find some back channels to get to her to see if she'd be willing to join us. But 3-time all-league player in Luxembourg, and she's actually gained Luxembourg citizenship, having played there long enough, where she played with the Luxembourg team in a FIBA event this summer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
and
go ahead.
Luxembourg's a great place. I was just going to say, I visited Luxembourg for work earlier this year, and it's actually a really cool area in that place. So I totally understand why she wants to stay there.
Yeah. We've been told kind of back channels from some people that we trust that Nicole Cardano Hillary is actually back in Bloomington and won't be playing this season, and may actually see, so you may see Nicole at several, at some games this year if you attend games in Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Yep. And then last, but certainly not least, Jory Davis actually reached out to us on Twitter. Jeff put out a tweet trying to figure out where everyone was going to be landing on this next upcoming overseas season. And Jory actually reached back out to us. So thanks to Jory, but she is still weighing her options for her professional options for this upcoming season. So nothing definitive for her as of yet.
Yeah, so we just want to wish best of luck to all those players as they continue on in their professional careers. And I'll go back to Grace real quick. You mentioned, a lot of your players, WNBA players, even your stars. Diana Taurasi has played overseas almost every year she's been in the league. It's just that the money in the WNBA has gotten better, but a lot of times the best players, the players here can make double, maybe even triple the money overseas, especially in the European leagues. Than what they're making here. So it's a good financial thing. And then, like you pointed out, Kathy, especially for a young player like Grace, a chance to keep continuing to play, kind of hone her skills, learn a little more about the professional game, because it is a little different over in Europe. But so we want to wish them all the best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the rest kind of overarching, just a quick comment on that. I'll be curious with the WNBA if they try to figure out a way to get at least some of these top players a little bit more money because of NIL and not just overseas, because now we have so much NIL going around. I mean, we've heard about some of the money that, like Caitlin Clark and others are making. It makes it really tough to want to go play in the WNBA where the salary is significantly lower. So,
and I've kind of thought this for a while, but especially now that you are getting some of the female players to get some real notoriety, a Caitlin Clark, an Angel Reese, a Sabrina Ionescu, a Brittany Stewart, that are putting up big numbers. And I know their business model really has never been this way, but the WNBA really does play out a season. And it makes you wonder if they would have some discussions about, trying to have a little more of a winterized season where you can keep a Caitlin Clark, an Angel Reese, some of those players kind of more at home, and keep them more a little bit, people talking about it. And I know the original model was not to compete directly with the NBA, but that's, it just is one of those things in my mind. At some point, maybe you have to have those discussions, but who knows? I'm not running the league, and they're not asking me if
they don't ask us. So. That's right.
So, Kathy, but before we move on, I've got news. You probably should have done this before we jumped into the news, but you got any thoughts on your mind about as we come into the podcast this week? And we really haven't, like I said, it's been a slow news cycle.
Been very slow. Yeah, I think, like we were texting about earlier today, just really waiting for the full schedule to drop for us. We'll get into it, and I'm sure you'll talk about. And right now, if you go out onto the website, there's only 4 games listed on the website for the women in terms of their schedule, and it's just okay. We're into September now, and the leaves here at least are starting to fall, and football starting, and now I really want that basketball schedule. That's what I'm really waiting for. So, yeah. Otherwise, it's just been kind of slow, waiting it out. I think at this point, and trying to understand, still kind of digesting and listening to things that are still coming out of that Greece trip, but yeah, pretty slow. So nothing really to add.
Yeah, so let's jump into what we know in the 7 games that we found. And I want to also make sure that I give kudos to Inside the Hall. The guys over at Inside the Hall were actually the first that I saw this from. So I want to make sure I give kudos out to them as citing them, however you do, the first report, like you do on a Twitter but they had done an open records request and I was able to go back and find that information from them for some of these. And then I was able to confirm them because, like Kathy said, there's only 4 games right now on the IUHoosiers.com website, but the other games we're going to talk about tonight, the other 3 are all on the opponent's website, their official schedules for 23-24. So I thought that was interesting. So we really kind of have confirmed these 7. We think there's at least 3, if not 4 more non-conference games, as well as the Big Ten games to be announced. But that we may be guessing a little bit there in terms of exactly how many non-conference games they're going to play. We assume 11, and that's kind of been what that's been the number. But so we're still missing some games, and we don't know why the Big Ten is taking forever to announce that. Again, they don't ask us, and waiting around for us to do podcasts. But so let's jump into it, and Kathy and I are going to take this kind of as we go through, and I'm going to kind of throw some questions at Kathy as well, as far as kind of put her on the spot a little bit tonight. She didn't know this, all right. But the first game we want to talk about is really what could be maybe a top 10 matchup. More than likely, at least a top 20 matchup when it occurs on November the 12th, all the way out in Palo Alto. The Hoosiers will be traveling to Stanford. It'll be the 4th all-time meeting between the 2 teams. This is the first of a home-and-home that's been announced. Stanford will be coming back to Bloomington next season. And the last meeting was in November of 21 in the Bahamas that saw Stanford win that game 69-66. And Stanford leads the all-time series 2-1. The Cardinal went 29-6 last season, and much like Indiana, they were shocked in the second round at home by Ole Miss in that NCAA tournament. So both teams really kind of early on going to be trying to fight a little bit of that mental ghost of everybody thought they were going to go deeper in the tournament, and they're going to and they didn't. So it's kind of those questions of how are they going to bounce back. Stanford, coached by IU alum and Naismith Hall of Famer and IU Hall of Famer Tara Vanderveer, 37th year at Stanford.
That's just amazing,
isn't it? 44th overall. She's 1,034 and 214 at Stanford. I believe also 3 national titles. It's an 83% winning percentage. She's 1,186, 265 overall, and 82% overall winning percentage as well. And Kat, this is where I'm going to kind of get into picking your brain a little bit. And as you look at the notes that we sent, we've got an All-American. We've got Mackenzie Holmes. Stanford's going to counter with their own All-American in Cameron Brink. And just having watched Stanford a little bit in the past and looking at the stats we dug up on them and Cameron Brink, what do you think about that matchup? Kind of almost that probably will be a true matchup. I would imagine Cameron Brink will be guarding Mackenzie Holmes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as soon as this was announced, again, thanks to Alex over at Inside the Hall for his investigative journalism there. And as soon as he announced it, the first thing I thought was that matchup between Mackenzie and Cameron Brink is going to be the storyline going into this game, right? You have the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year with Cameron Brink. You have the Big Ten Defensive Player in the Year with Mackenzie Holmes. You have 2 All-Americans. They're roughly around the same size. Mackenzie, I think, if I remember off the top of my head, I don't have the team stats. I think she averaged maybe a little bit more, but right around 15 points, double digits, high percentage field goals, like very much on paper. It seems like they're going to be evenly matched up. What I remember watching of Cameron Brink, though, and this is where I wonder if Mackenzie might have the edges. I think that, and I don't know how to put this nicely, Cameron Brink is kind of skinny in terms of, I don't feel like muscle-wise she might be able to push Mackenzie around as much. So we'll see. I don't know what she's developed in the off season or whatever, but that's where I feel Mackenzie might have a bit of an advantage for her. So I definitely, the marquee matchup is, I think, of our offseason. Very early on, Stanford was, in Charlie Crean's top 10, number 9 in the 2 early preseason. So, yeah, I expect this is probably going to be the marquee non-conference game for us to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you about Brink. I love Cameron Brink's game. Don't get me wrong. So any Stanford fans who are listening to this for anything, but it's more along the line of Mackenzie would have more of a physical presence down low. Now, that doesn't mean Cameron Brink can't use things to her advantage. I think she's longer. When you look at, they may be about the same size, but Cameron Brink has a lot of length. She's almost a freak athlete in terms of her length. And she's been an extraordinary shot blocker over the course of her career. So that part will be interesting. We talked with Lenny Holmes, Mac's dad, the last episode that we had with Doing the Work. And one of the things that he says that really helps Mackenzie is that she doesn't really go fast. She really knows what she knows what she wants to do, and she's not going to, speed up and get, kind of get flustered down there in the post. So I think I'm really just looking forward to this matchup. I love the fact that IU is willing to play this kind of game. And we know Terry Morin is not shied away from good competition, but I just love these this to me, when you think of Stanford, see if you agree with me, when you think of Stanford women's basketball, it's right there with UConn, Tennessee. It is a blue blood of women's basketball.
100%. When you talk about having a coach that's there for 37 years, and not only 37 years, but having basically an 8-17 record. That's just amazing in any span of time, but to do that over 37 years, the longevity and the history that she's brought there, I think is amazing. I think the interesting thing for me that we'll be wondering about with Stanford, contrasting with us, we have at least, we have 4 of our 5 starters coming back. We have a fairly known commodity of who's probably going to fill in and maybe not coming off of the bench. And we have a good understanding. They lost Haley Jones last year.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be a huge gap for them to fill. And projections are that maybe it's going to be a couple of their younger guards that will really fill in, or maybe a wing. And to me, it feels like, maybe there's some more unknowns for their teams and how they fill some of the productivity they lost from last year. I think you mentioned they only have one other player returning that average in double figures last year.
Hannah Jump.
Yeah, exactly.
What a basketball name, by the way.
Yes, perfect.
Yes. Yeah. But she averaged 11.2 per game last year. And so, I think there's some, but I still think, and I'm not trying to say taking away from us. We think we know our commodities, but it'll be nice to see how some of those players, I think we get a better idea because Grace missed so much time last year, but you are still going to have to work in somebody, and it's going to be a little different mix. Grace Berger won't be around, and it kind of be that security blanket. So it'll be nice to see what this team looks like. And we talked a little bit in the off season about some of the players, and we still want to do a little bit deeper dive on some of the returners, but we've been hearing, really have heard nothing but positives about the way Lexi Bargesser has looked all summer.
Yeah, same. And we've heard a lot about Sarah too. She's really stepping up. So
yeah. So,
by far, early on the road, this will be quite the matchup.
Yeah. So, and then the next matchup that we know about, November 23rd, Tennessee down in Fort Myers for a tip-off tournament. It'll be the 4th all-time meeting as well for that one. IU won last year in Knoxville, 79-67 for their first victory over the Lady Volunteers. And if you remember that game, Kathy, we'd had a lead pretty much for the whole first half, allowed Tennessee to get back into the game. I think even tie it either late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter. And then this was before Grace got hurt. And then Grace Berger kind of took over in the fourth quarter and made plays. Yeah. And Indiana was able to get out there with a 12-point win.
Yep, absolutely. So this game's coming up. Going to be over Thanksgiving. In fact, I think November 23rd might actually.
I think so.
Thanksgiving Day or Friday after. I can't remember now. So either way, it's either Thanksgiving or Friday of. So hopefully everyone's still awake from all their turkey to be able to watch this one, because I think this will be a very interesting matchup for us.
And I forgot to put this in notes, but I believe this is nationally televised.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I know.
I'm pretty sure this game's nationally televised on Fox.
I think you're right. That sounds right. I think that whole tournament is. So really interesting matchup again. So, not sure what to expect again from Tennessee by their standards. They finished 25-12 last year, definitely a down year for them. So I will expect that this will be a very tough matchup, that they'll be wanting to bounce back from that season last year.
Yeah, Kelly Harper, their 5th-year coach now, 20th year overall, 88-39 at Tennessee. You're still trying to fill shoes at Tennessee, kind of like a lot of coaches at Indiana men's side are still trying to fill the shoes of Bob Knight.
Right.
Tennessee women's coaches are still trying to fill the shoes of Pat Summitt. But Kelly Harper, former player at Tennessee. And so kind of that lineage of, going out and getting somebody who had played at Tennessee, played for Pat Summitt, that idea to bring her back. Rakea Jackson, a 6'2 senior forward, led the Vols last year, just under 20 a game. And Kathy, if I remember right, she missed the IU game last year.
That sounds right to me too. I can't remember
I didn't go back
exactly
and look at the box score.
if it was her or if it might have been Tamari Key, because Tamari Key missed a lot of time last year as well. And she's expected hopefully to be back, but she missed a lot of the season last year. She was dealing with some blood clots in her lungs. So maybe it might have been her. I was thinking it was Tamari, but it might have been Rakia as well. Yeah.
So, but she was first team all SEC.
Yeah. So definitely going to be a handful. And, the returning as well. Some Jillian Hollinshead will also be back. She's 6'5", and then they have a Belmont transfer in Destiny Wells, who will be kind of their ball handler. So I think pretty tall, right? They have a couple gals that are 6'6", 6'5", or maybe 3 of them even. So I think that'll be interesting. They'll have a lot of size collectively as a whole, I think maybe perhaps compared to us.
Yeah, and I think the one thing to look at there is, again, they're trying, how do they mesh? You talk about, and I guess the one thing we're going to talk about a lot of teams as we go through the season, especially early, how some of the transfer portals are going to mesh with the teams they're going to. IU has one player coming in. We have the 2 freshmen and then the 1 transfer coming in. So I don't think it's as big a deal for IU this year. But we've seen several teams going out and be heavy in the portal. And so it'll be interesting to see how some of that chemistry plays together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were asking the same questions about ourselves last year.
Yep.
I think those questions will go away for us this year, but I agree with the transfer portal. I think every year we're going to see teams that rely heavily on the transfers going forward.
I think this is going to be a little tougher game this year. I think that Tennessee is going to be a little better. I thought they kind of they started off really slow last year. If I remember right, They played OSU. We're playing Ohio State kind of tough. And then Ohio State had been pressing them, but all of a sudden the press just waylaid them and they ran off like a 20-point win in Columbus. And then we go down there and beat them. They kind of get off to a slow start, but about mid-season, Kelly Harper got her team back to kind of being, one of the better teams in the SEC. They're all, the SEC right now, kind of all chasing South Carolina. That'll be interesting to see how good they are without Aaliyah Boston and some of the players around her. But that's what Tennessee's trying to get back to. Kind of, like I said, a lot of analogies there between Tennessee women's basketball in the last 6-8 years to where IU men's basketball has been as well. Kind of, trying to get back to that blue blood status or to reinforce their blue blood status with that. But I think that's game, and again, also just because it's over the holiday, it's on the road, it's and hopefully it's not in one of those ballrooms like they played in Las Vegas last year. Hopefully it's actual, a better facility than that, but we'll find out. I know you were telling me in the text today that you and Sean were thinking about going down there.
Yeah, we're hoping to go down there. But they're only selling travel packages right now, which we didn't want to participate in for various reasons. So we're waiting to see. I think they open up tickets only to the game on September 20th. So we'll see what they have left, cost, and all of that. But yeah, we're thinking about ditching the old families and heading down to Fort Myers. So a little warmer weather than we'll see here in Iowa.
I like that, ditching the family. So as part of that same tournament or same tip-off classic, it's not really a winner versus winner, loser versus loser. They'll be playing Princeton then 2 days later, and a Princeton team that we seem to know kind of, a little bit. It's only the 3rd all-time meeting. IU won the last meeting. Remember the 2022 NCAA tournament, the second round. Grace Berger made the game winner. Yeah, 56-55. But this is a Princeton team that went 24-6 last year. They lost to Utah in the second round. Again, they won their first round game, lost in the second round at Utah. So this is a team that's used to getting a win in the NCAA tournament. Carla Berubia is in her 5th season at Princeton. She's 75-12 at Princeton, and with that, and she has her 22nd year overall. But they also return the Ivy League Player of the Year in Caitlin Chin. And why don't you tell us a little bit about Caitlin Chin?
Yeah. So Caitlin Chin, she is a junior. She's 5'9" and she's a guard. As you mentioned, she was Ivy League Player of the Year, and she averaged 16 points per game last year, 4 rebounds and almost 4 assists, and shooting a nice 42% field goal rate as well. So yeah, I would expect Caitlin to come out and, expect to lead them. And as you mentioned, Princeton gave us fits in that second round tournament 2 years ago. And that was that was at home in front of, a very raucous home crowd at that time too. So, I don't expect Princeton to just roll over on this game as well, right? So I think you have three very tough matchups of non-conference games that we know of in November between Stanford and Tennessee, and then now Princeton. Like Princeton is definitely not any team I would expect that will overlook it all.
No, and they also have two other double-figure scorers back. Julia Cunningham was a 5'11 senior guard. She was second team All-Ivy. Grace Stone is a 5'11 senior guard, averaged 10.1 per game. I mean, so there's some other talent around Caitlin Chin here. And so, and what we've seen with what Carla Berube has done with her team over the last few years, this is a game you just get the feeling that that Princeton's going to play the way they want to play. They're going to stick to their game plan. They're going to be disciplined, and we're going to have to be really focused that day.
Yeah, I think so. And I not knowing their full roster, but it feels to me like at least who's leading them is a very guard heavy team, as opposed to some of the other teams we just talked about, right? Tennessee with all their size, Stanford with Cameron Brink. So now how do we switch and change I don't think we'll change our philosophy, but how do we do with that matchup? And it's a change in some of the matchups and the marquee ones, the key matchups. So that's what I'll be looking for is how do we handle now, especially our guards, right? Because I think, we lost Grace Berger and we're going to be relying on Sarah more. And I expect Lexi Bargesser to have a bigger role for us as well. Mm-hmm. Who knows about the freshmen perhaps, but at least those two, I really think that they need to step up defensively when we see Princeton with the guard play that they're probably going to have.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we'll obviously be looking at is some of these early games, maybe not the Princeton game, the Tennessee Stanford game, but I do think a little bit we need to see is, are we going to get a little deeper in the rotation? I know those are the questions we always seem to have, that we are concerns that we have almost every season going there. Are we ever going to really get past 6 or 7 on the chart and get to 8, 9, see if we can save some minutes for a Mackenzie Holmes, a Chloe Moore McNeil, a Sarah Scalia, because instead of having them play 37, 38 minutes in the preseason of a non-conference, and then they're still also playing 37, 38 in the Big Ten. It's something, there's one of those I think you got to kind of, give one way or the other. So with that. And then our last game that we know of that's on the IU website is the game in Maine. And that game is actually going to be in Portland. For those of you who are not familiar, the Maine campus is up in the northern part of the state, in the northern, half of the state, but they're going to play down in Portland, southern end of the state, literally within about a half an hour drive, you're in Massachusetts. I mean, if you've ever been up that area, you cross through New Hampshire and it takes about 15 minutes. And in another half hour, you're probably an hour from Boston. It's been a while since I've been up there and drove it, but it's not all that far. But it'll be in Portland. It's the third meeting all time. I used one of the previous two. The last time they played was in December of 2004, part of the 04-05 season. IU won 67-59. The Black Bears went 16-14 last year. And so obviously they're looking to have a little bit more of a bounce back season. But interesting here, they return the America East Player of the Year in Adriana Smith. So we're seeing some really good talent. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Adriana Smith, Kathy?
Yeah. So Adriana, she is a 6 foot tall junior. She's a forward. She averaged last year right at 20 points per game and 9.8 rebounds. So almost averaging a double-double, really right at it. We'll round it up and give her a double-double, but also almost 3 assists per game. So, and a nice 49% field goal percentage there. So again, probably, somebody I would expect Mackenzie most likely would be probably getting that matchup there, unless they have somebody else on their team that we just aren't aware of. But nice returning American East Player of the Year for Maine to be having on their team.
Yeah, and I saw something as I was doing the research on it. Her numbers actually went up in conference play. She was like almost 24 a game, almost 11 rebounds a game in conference play. So this was a very good player. And like I said, Adriana Smith is one to look out for. The other player is Ann Simon, a 5'9" senior guard who missed roughly half of last season. And I dug around a little bit because it was at one specific, but it sounded like she just dealt with some nagging injuries all season last year and missed some games. But she still averaged 13.6 a game. I think she was second team all conference. And the year before, in 21-22, she was the conference player of the year. So Maine actually has the last two America East Player of the Year. So again, they've got a little bit of talent. They just have been struggling. Albany and a couple of the other teams in the America East have kind of moved to the top of that league.
Yeah, makes sense. So, of course, I think the storyline in this is the return for Mackenzie to be playing
Yep.
back in Rome State. Obviously, speaking with her dad, her father a few weeks ago, it sounds like we might have a fairly heavy Indiana presence. The way he's had so many people already reaching out to him to try to organize some tickets for everyone. So, I think this will be again interesting. Because it'll be on the road. But I think I'll be curious to see how many Indiana fans end up out in Maine to see this matchup. But that I think will probably be the headline for us.
Yeah, and this goes back to for those who are fans who are kind of have followed us last year or two. Coach Morin does this quite a bit. She'll try to get a game, maybe not their senior year, but their junior year, where she can get a game back someplace close to home for them. For Grace, it wasn't as big a deal. It was Grace from Louisville. And so, kind of Southern Indiana, things like that. We never really played Louisville. I think if we'd gotten Louisville in the old Big East, Big Ten or ACC Big Ten Challenge, she would be happy about that. But I think that's one of the reasons maybe she didn't schedule Louisville per se, was she didn't know what exactly was going to happen with the Big Ten ACC Challenge in terms of what the matchups were going to be. But, we've seen her do this with a couple of the other players in the past where she's, gone back, kind of get them a home game in front of their fans and things like that. So, and kudos to Coach Morin for that. And I think, it'll be interesting to see as if Mackenzie
really,
but
they had Quinnipiac a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Her dad mentioned that they thought Quinnipiac was going to be that game for them. But it'll be interesting to see, being in Maine, if she has any nerves. Because like Lenny said, this is, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically playing in the same place where like the Maine state tournament is played, and she won some state tournaments in Maine. But it'll be interesting to see with that large contingent of family and friends that will be wearing their IU gear, if she has any nerves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this will be the first time too, at least for what we know of the schedule right now in terms of dates and whatnot. I guess maybe not the first time, but it will definitely be a game where I expect to see a lot of the bench.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nope, that was it. Go ahead.
No, I was saying it's a game. It's the one game right now of the four that we've talked about so far where you figure IU is going to be a favorite.
Right.
It is Indiana's going to be you're going to see the line. Indiana's going to be possibly a double-digit favorite. I don't know. We might be favored against Princeton and Tennessee, but that game in Palo Alto would imagine will be a slight underdog. I can't imagine we're going to be the betting favorite going into it. So those are the four games that are on the IU website, and we found. Inside the Hall had actually, as we said, congratulations to Alex, and kudos to Alex for finding this, and we got it and used it. So we want to make sure we give all the shout out to Alex for finding it. These games, though, I did as I dug through, found them on their school websites schedules for this year. So I'm not quite sure why we're not putting them on ours. But Kathy, real quick, let's kind of go through these because these are what we kind of probably refer to as bye games. These are games against mid-major, low major teams that are coming into Bloomington. You would expect us to be favorites in all three of these games. November 9th versus Eastern Illinois. It's the fourth time we've played them. We're 3-0. The head coach at Eastern is Matt Bullant. And some of you might remember him when he was the head coach at Illinois several years ago. He'd been there for about 5 or 6 years at Illinois. It didn't end well for him at Illinois. I remember him a little bit when he was coaching the women also up at Green Bay. And they had some really good teams at Green Bay as well. So I can't remember his time there, but they only returned one double-digit scorer, Macy McGlone, at 13 a game, 7.5 rebounds. But so this is a game again. This will be should be right now. We think will be the very first game of the season, and you would think it's a real good opening game for this IU group to play.
Yeah, exactly. This should be a nice warm-up game for them. Hopefully introduce some of our freshmen to some, Division I basketball, introduce us to the freshmen as well. That's what I'm really wanting to see from this game. We're already seeing Mackenzie kind of being, I don't want to call her load managed, but whatever we want to call it, load management. But we saw that in Greece where she didn't play at all. I heard an interview with her here recently where she mentioned when they were doing some of their physical testing, one of the things they usually test them on is a mile run, and they told her not to run it. And so we're starting to see that maybe mentality of making sure she that durability stays throughout the season. So expecting Mackenzie to be fully healthy coming into this season, but I would hope not to see her play a whole lot in this game, and that we'll really see a lot more of Lily Meister.
If Mackenzie's playing 30 minutes against Eastern Illinois, that would be a concern.
We're in trouble.
Both from the standpoint of that's too many minutes, and secondly, we're struggling with an Eastern Illinois team.
Right. Exactly.
That at least on paper we shouldn't be. Why don't you take the next one, Kathy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other November matchup we have is on the 17th against Murray State. This will be the third meeting all time between the schools, and IU has won the first two of those. The last matchup was actually in Murray in the 2012-2013 season, where Indiana won by 1 point, 63-62. Last year, Murray State was 15-16. They are led by head coach Rochelle Turner, who is entering her 7th season at Murray State. She is a Murray State alum. She also coached high school basketball in Kentucky for well over 20 years. So she's definitely a seasoned coach. In terms of their leading returning player, it's Caitlin Young. Caitlin is a 6'1" senior. She's a forward who averaged 21 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. And then last, they have Hannah McKay, who's a 6-foot senior, and she's also a forward who averaged 10 points per game for Murray State.
And Caitlin Young was the 2022 OVC Player of the Year. So she wasn't last year, this past season, but she was the year before. But it seems to be a theme here. I wonder if Coach Moore actually did some of this on purpose. The more I see the theme of size, of post players, forwards, 6 foot, 6'2", maybe she did, she may not have, but it's just kind of interesting that it seems so many of the players we're talking about coming back for these teams seem to be those types of players that McKenzie would match up with. And even to a certain degree of Lily, for Lily Meister as a sophomore to have to go up against some of these more veteran bigs and stuff and to maybe get her a little more ready for the Big Ten season as well. Even though we thought Lily played well last year, hopefully she takes on a little bit bigger role this year. As well. The last game that we know of, at least right now in the non-conference of the 7, is December 18th. This will be probably right before finals, or right as finals is probably getting done before Christmas. We'll be interested to see if they have another game between that and Christmas. It'll be against Evansville. It's the 9th all-time meeting. IU leads the series 8-0. The last game was an 83-80 win for IU in the 2006-2007 season at Simon Skjodt Assembly Hall. Evansville's been struggling, Kathy. I know that's down in your neck of the woods growing up. And, at times it's had a pretty good program, but they've really struggled over the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, that is true. You can see that with their 11-19 record from last year, which was the most victories they had since 2017. I think that tells us probably a lot of where their program is right now with the Purple Aces. As you mentioned, that was a team that we took my high school team down to watch every once in a while when I was going to high school. But definitely struggling right now. And
if I remember reading through some of the information about them, trying to get a little, their head coach, Robin Sher-Wells, will be starting her 3rd year. She's 19-41 in her first 2 seasons, which doesn't sound great. But like Kathy said, the last year, 11 wins was the most wins since 2017. The year before, her first year, they actually won 2 games in the Missouri Valley Conference, which was an improvement over the year before. So it's really gotten down in Evansville with the Purple Aces. But I think I saw where they actually have extended her contract just because they have that much belief that she's getting it going in the right direction. So, but again, this is another game. This game, the Murray game, on paper, Indiana should be a double-digit favorite, and we shouldn't have to be hopefully getting our starters 35 minutes a game.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we expect from that.
So, Kathy, I kind of put you on the spot here. Didn't tell you I was going to do this, and I'll go first. Actually, okay. 7 games.
Yep.
I'll go 6-1. I'll take 6-1. Obviously 7-0 would be awesome. I think 6-1 is realistic. I think the game at Palo Alto is going to be a very tough game. I could live with 5-2. Anything less than 5-2, I think we're going to be having some post-game discussions about what's not working.
Yeah. No, as we go through it, I was actually tallying in my head wins, losses. I have 5-2 in my head. I really think Stanford is that's going to be a really, really tough game for us to win on the road with a very most likely a top 10 team as well. And I really think that Tennessee is going to be coming back and wanting to, avenge, if you will, the loss to us last year and show that they're back on track. So those were the 2 I had in my head. But that Tennessee game for sure is a toss up. It's a neutral site. Hopefully my husband and I included some Indiana fans down there to help maybe tilt that way. But, those are the 2 losses that I have, but I think the other 5 are definitely teams that we should be beating this year.
Yeah, the Tennessee game is the one in my head that I'm kind of like 5-2 I can live with, but I
Yep.
think I realistically think 6-1 is going to be what we are. Because I think we can find a way to win that Tennessee game. But like you said, I think the thing about that tip-off tournament like that is you just never quite know. Even though we are a veteran group, it's sometimes those environments can be a little stale. There's not much, especially if there's very few fans there. And so can you be disciplined enough? You're also in the sun. You're probably leaving Bloomington when it's going to be colder. Can you understand that you're there to play and get your job done, then enjoy the pool and some of the other things? That's never been a problem for Coach Morin and her teams, but it's still one of those things I think that is kind of and I think that goes for any team that goes, we've seen teams go, maybe not so much on the women's side, but men's side, they'll go to one of these types of tournaments and you think they're going to go 3-0. And all of a sudden it's like the next thing on Monday, everybody's talking about, well, what happened to so-and-so? They're 0-3 and, they're going to fall on, and I don't think that'll happen to us, but I just think that's what you guard against,
Yeah.
And so that's why I think I agree with you. That Tennessee game is the one. And also, let's say you win that Tennessee game, then that Princeton game also is one of those. You better be ready to bounce back. Yeah. You better be ready to bounce back for Princeton as well. So anyway, hey, any final thoughts on the non-conference schedule that we know of so far?
No, I just, again, they have those 2 in particular marquee with Princeton right there as well between Tennessee and Stanford that really are going to be headlining our non-conference schedule, at least that we know of right now. I would expect that we won't see any more top 10, top 15 teams jump on here. So I'm assuming those will be our 2 tough teams to play.
The only way I think a third team gets in there similar to those 2 is if somehow we're playing somebody out of the Big East and, the men have the Gavitt games. And if we somehow get, the women have, get a game with I'm trying to think who in the Big East would be a good women's program right off the top of my head. UConn obviously would be one, but, you get a UConn, a Xavier, I'm not sure exactly how good the Xavier women are anymore. They used to be really good there for a while when Kevin McGuff was down there as head coach.
Right.
But yeah, that'd be the only way I see it. I don't think they'll be going out looking per se, but if they picked up a game like that, where maybe it's a neutral site type game, you might see them try something with that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
right.
Yep. Oh, Quang, I love your, your jonesing. It has been a very slow news cycle, but we thought now is perfect, especially since we're not going to do a show for a couple more weeks. We got some schedule for conflicts and stuff coming up. So I think we come back in October. We're going to dive a little bit deeper. Hopefully we'll know the conference schedule by then, the rest of the schedule. But we also want to talk about some of our returning players. We really haven't talked a ton about them. So we'll break down that and probably get back to going on a more regular basis as well in October, whether it's, pretty much about once a week there, unless we really get a slow news cycle. But we do want to remind you that our next episode is to be, actually right now, plan on October 4th. That's what Kathy and I are planning on, is October 4th. But keep your eye on the community at Assembly Call or our Twitter feed, and we'll let you know if we make any changes. But right now, plan on October 4th for our next Doing the Work podcast. Be sure, and again, if you want to follow us on Twitter, just search Doing the Work. And you should be the first thing that pops up, and you can follow us there. Also, don't forget, you can join our community at assemblycall.com/join. For those of you who want to get more information, not only on the women, but the men and some other sports. Our friend Ari does an awesome job of updating some of the other sports, soccer especially, but also, the other sports who are going on as well. So Assembly Call will be on tomorrow with their normal weekly show at 9:00 Eastern, 8 Central. I think right now, if I saw the community, Jared's looking for kind of some basic questions. I don't even have to be basketball related for tomorrow night. That's again, the men are in the slow. I think we'll know a lot more for the men coming up next week. They have a huge recruiting weekend coming up this weekend with the football game on Friday and on Saturday. Kathy, by the way, did you see, I know we're not the men's show, but did you see that? I'd like to see this one for the women. Did you see the Twitter feed of the kids who are coming in for the recruiting visit, and Mike Woodson driving the bus?
Yes, that was awesome.
We need Coach Morin in that same kind of, driving the bus for a recruit coming in.
I would love to see any tweets when we have recruits coming in.
Yes.
So,
And that was one of the interesting things we talked with Lenny about. I mean, in terms of Mackenzie's visit, and obviously we weren't doing the show then, but they're pretty, I mean, I think they know when they have their kids on campus, but as far as publicizing it, they can be pretty low key in this women's program about, who's on campus for a visit or whatever. And sometimes they'll get commitments. You'll be like, didn't even know we were recruiting that kid. But hey, glad we got that kid, and we think they can play. So, but anyway, Assembly Call will be on tomorrow. If you want to see us do the show live or be part of the live chat, or workaholics, as we like to call them, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Assembly Call. You can be, again, I already talked about the private community. You can join at assemblycall.com/join, or if you are a member, go and make sure, if you haven't been for a while, but it's assemblycall.com/community. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our logos. Also a big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. And thank you guys for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you soon. We'll talk in a couple of weeks. So until then, keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right.
Good show.
Nice.
Good
job wrapping up the summer.
Kind of. Good way of putting it. But yeah, so now we'll come back in October, and probably, I know we'll have maybe some conflicts, but probably ought to figure about every Wednesday, maybe start about every Wednesday.
If that we do every week, I think be good.
Because then we can cover the schedule. We can cover the the seniors and the juniors and the sophomores that we haven't really talked about. And
dive into maybe, like, if we have time to dive into like the Iowa and Ohio State at least.
Yeah, and I'll reach out. I'll see if I can reach out to I think it was Kyle. See if Kyle would be interested in joining us, and see if we can find anybody. I'm still trying to hope that we'll find somebody that can. Well, Amanda was supposed to be trying to figure out if we find a way to get Nikki's info, but so we can get some guests, but we'll try and see what we can do, but looking forward to it. As we start, it feels like now you're past Labor Day, and there was some tweets out today by the program showing them doing some workout stuff and pictures of workouts and stuff. So you just feel like it's getting closer.
Yes. Now we're really jonesing.
Yeah.
To quote Quang in our chat here. So now we're really itching for some basketball.
If you're on Twitter and you follow John Rothstein, it's one of the things. It's like 62 days until basketball season starts, and so and I'm one of those countdown guys. I do that at school. I got my calendar and my board, and it's like, hey, we got 100s. I think tomorrow. When I go in tomorrow, I have 160 days left, and it's like, awesome. And so I'm one of those countdown guys. What's the next grading period ends in 20 days. So John Rothstein's a man after my own heart.
That's great.
So,
well, good. Well, I have 7 days till vacation. If we're going to count down stuff,
count them down and enjoy your vacation.
We will.
So, all right. Hey, everybody, thanks for being out there. We'll see you on the 4th.
Yep. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
See ya.